Yo, what's going on, Dragon Ballers? Welcome back to another video. Today we're talking about a bunch of rulings that you need to know for Nationals and really any tournament even following Nationals. These are just pretty important things to know as far as set 15 goes and other things as well. So if you're new here, make sure to subscribe, hit that bell so you never miss a video. And if you guys want to help support the channel, there are many ways to do so down in the description. But if you're looking for custom sleeves, playmats, any TCG accessories like that, be sure to use the link in the description to yourplaymat.com. The stuff is super high quality. I love my art sleeves. They don't peel. I don't have to double sleeve them. They have a great shuffle. Again, the link will get you 10% off your order in the description. Let's get started. Alright, so we're going over a couple of FAQ rulings. Now, I want to let you guys know that this is actually being recorded the weekend before Nationals, and the FAQ has slowly been updating for set 15. I've seen new rulings added every couple days, so there's probably even more than this by now, but these are some of the ones that I think are still very important and some of the ones that I've been asking about. Now, this one has to do with a Finn deck. Now, if you guys saw my Finn deck profile earlier this week, I recorded that before this part of the FAQ was updated, so I didn't know how the deck operated, but I made sure to let you guys know in that video that if it operates one way, the deck's better. If it operates the other way, the deck's a little bit worse off. So let's see how the ruling's been confirmed. Skill Hunter Majin Buu. If my opponent plays a unison that has skills, does this card's auto trigger? No, it does not. Skill Hunter Deborah. If my opponent has a unison in play that has skills, can I play this card using its activate main? No, you can't. Kind of weird, that's actually the wrong name of the card, but we're going to use that card as our example here. So Demon God Deborah Skill Hunter says, activate main for a black. If your opponent has a skillless battle card or unison card in play this card from your hand. So the question always was, does the word skillless apply to battle card and unison card? And it is confirmed by Bandai in the FAQ that yes, it does. So that just brings the versatility of the deck down by, you know, probably a pretty significant notch. So if your opponent's deciding to play in a way where they don't want to allow you to awaken super early, they don't want to play battle cards into your leader just to have them sucked up, then they can just go unison beatdown if their deck has like a unison that can do that. And now you have to hard cast your Finn Unit Absorber for 2 to suck up their unison and then give it back to them with no skills, just to turn on a bunch of the effects of your deck. So that definitely makes the deck a little bit less versatile, more difficult to use, less good, however you want to word it. But yeah, that is a very, very important ruling to know, because if you go to Nationals and play against someone who's playing Finn, it's very important to know how that works, especially because there has been a lot of confusion on it in the past. Then we have two Universe 6 rulings. So the first one is SS Caulifla Spirited Striker, and I'll bring up the cards in a second. We'll just read the rulings first. If I have 3 markers on this card and use a -3 marker ability, do I get to play a Caulifla card from my deck? The answer is no, you do not. SS Caulifla Proud Zenith. Can I put an opponent's card with barrier on the bottom of their deck using this card's auto? The answer is yes, you can. So let's bring up the cards. So for SS Caulifla Spirited Striker, I talked about this unison during the Kale breakdown video and the Kale deck profile. So the -3 says, if your leader is a blue Kale card and you have 5 or more energy, you may place this card under your leader card. If you do, play up to 1 Caulifla card with 30,000 power or less from your deck, then shuffle your deck. So the reason that you can't use a -3 and resolve this effect if it only has 3 markers is because it'll just immediately go to the drop area, meaning you can no longer put it under your leader, so you can't resolve the rest of the effect. That is a very important ruling to know if you're looking to play a more thematic Kale deck. And again, if you play against it, you want to make sure your opponent's doing things the right way. And I wouldn't super fault anyone for, you know, using these cards and you know, not using them the 100% correct way, especially for the first tournament that they're legal. But it is Nationals. It's very, very important to know these things. That's kind of why I'm going over it in today's video. For SS Caulifla Proud Zenith, this card's probably more relevant because it's more of a better generic blue card. So that question had to do with the second auto. If it's your opponent's turn, place it to one of your opponent's battle cards with energy cost of 4 or less at the bottom of the owner's deck, then switch one of your blue energy to active mode. So the question here was, does this get around barrier? And the only reason that was really a question is because most of the time when cards get around barrier, they specifically specify that they ignore barrier. This card just doesn't use the word choose, it says place. So barrier specifically says it cannot be chosen by your opponent's card effects, right? So the fact that it says place, it does get around barrier. Now, personally, I really just hope that they use wording like this going forward to, you know, identify cards that get around barrier instead of having to add the unnecessary text of saying ignoring barrier. It's just a way cleaner way to go about it, and hopefully they do that long enough, and then the community comes to a general understanding that this now means it ignores barrier. It doesn't have to specifically say it gets around barrier. It just doesn't have to say choose, therefore it gets around barrier. So that'd be a really nice way for Bandai to kind of clean up some of their wording. Then we have another U6 ruling. So this is for a Sister's Determination. So this is another card that I've had questions about. Can my opponent attack with their leader card after I use this card's counterattack skill? The answer is yes, they can. Now that doesn't fully answer the question that I had, but I'm going to read the card effect for you guys, And I think after I read it 2 times, I think you'll be able to see where the confusion comes from. So the card says, if your leader card is a U6 card, negate the attack, then you may choose 1 blue card in your hand and discard it. If you do, your opponent can only attack 1 more time for the turn with a battle card unison card with 20,000 power or more. I'll read it again. If your leader card is a Universe 6 card, negate the attack, you may choose 1 blue card in your hand and discard it. If you do, your opponent can only attack 1 more time for the turn with a battle card unison card with 20,000 power or more. So I think with that slight inflection, depending on how you read it, you can interpret this card in different ways. So the question is, when you use this card and pitch a card, do they literally only get 1 more attack for the turn and it has to be the battle card unison card, 20,000 power or more? Or can they attack with whatever else they want for the turn, except only 1 more time with a unison or battle card, 20,000 power or more? This answer says they can attack with their leader. So that kind of means that they still get other attacks outside of what this floodgates, but this doesn't specifically answer the question of can they attack with battle cards under 20,000 power. That's where the tricky part of the card comes in. The way this is being ruled, I would lean that yes, you can attack with battle cards and unison cards under 20,000 power because this doesn't put a restriction on your leader. So the interpretation where it's flat out 1 more time for the turn doesn't exactly hold weight as far as this FAQ ruling is concerned, but I think it's still kind of up in the air, and we'll have to see how it's ruled at Nationals if players are using this card in their U6 decks. Then we have another one for Red Broly. Now this one I think is it should be obvious, but I'm gonna be honest with you guys, I didn't even think about this until I read it in the FAQ, and I'll explain why after this. So if I choose Frieza's Death Ball with Broly's auto skill, can I activate the auto skill on Frieza's Death Ball? The answer is no, you can't, and it makes perfect sense. Let's read the leader real quick. When this card attacks, draw 1. Then if there are 7 or more red extra cards in your drop, you can activate the Activate Battle skill on a red non-field extra card with an original energy cost 3 less in your drop without paying its energy cost. If you do, send that card to the warp. If you read Frieza's Death Ball, half of its effects in Activate Battle and the other half is an auto, so you only get the half of the effect that is an Activate Battle, not the full auto. Again, makes perfect sense, but I'll be honest with you guys, when I was messing around with Red Broly, when it first got revealed, I didn't even think of this part because I didn't go back with like a magnifying glass and reread Frieza's Death Ball, right? I kind of just like assumed it was fully part of the Activate Battle, but now having read this FAQ, it kind of made me realize like, oh yeah, that makes perfect sense. Let me make sure I know the exact separation of effects on Frieza's Death Ball. So it can be really helpful to go through the FAQ and just make sure that you're using cards properly and making it all make sense. So I kind of wanted to point this out for that reason. I feel like it was kind of an easy thing to sort of just skim over, right? Then we have another ruling not coming from the FAQ, but coming from David Fashbinder, who will be the head judge at Nationals. So unfortunately, this puts a hamper on the SS4 Toa deck that I showed you guys a week or 2 ago. It is a little bit unfortunate, but let's read what it has to say. There have been a lot of questions lately surrounding the interaction of Toa's permanent skill, removing specified cost and reducing energy cost by 1, and SS4 Bardock's permanent skill, reducing the activation cost of the counter skill by 1 black energy. I want to be clear, they do not work together, making Bardock's skill free. With Toa eliminating specified colors from Bardock's cost, there is no black energy to reduce. This is how this card will be ruled at Nationals, so please be aware and be prepared. Now, I gotta say, this makes perfect sense because I guess the way Bardock is worded, it specifically reduces a black specified cost, which would, under normal circumstances, reduce 1 cost, and I guess you can say also 1 specified black cost. But with the leader giving it no specified cost, I guess you can't count that as a reduced skill point. That does make sense to me after reading it that way, but obviously a lot of people were under the impression that this card and the Gohan counterattack were free, so this is a pretty important clarification to know about. And then finally, guys, what kind of video would this be if we didn't talk about the end of match procedures that are changing for Nationals? I'm going to give this a read, and I think there's one really important thing to realize that I didn't see on first glance. I think I want to make you guys aware of it. So if time is called while players are in the middle of a game, the current game must have a decision of win or loss. To resolve the current game, players follow the following steps. 1. The player with the most game wins is declared the winner of the match. So what does this mean? That didn't really click on my brain the first time I read it. So let's say you guys finish game 1, you're in game 2, time's called. To resolve the current game, the player with the most game wins is declared the winner of the match. So if you're in time in game 2, whoever won game 1 wins the match. That is super, super important. After I read through this whole thing, which we will do in a second, I thought the entire thing of who has more life applied to every game in time, but that actually only applies to games 1 and 3 if there's not more games won than the other player, right? So if game 2 time's called, whoever won game 1 just automatically wins the match. That's a really big thing. So next up, if tied, the current active player plays out their turn. This is considered turn 0. Players will play out additional 3 turns with specified time limit. Second player's turn will be considered turn 1, followed by the first player's turn 2, then back to the second player for the third and final turn. So this only occurs the end of round procedures as far as extra turns go, and the extra 10 minutes only happens if it's not game 2, which is really important to know. If neither player has won at the end of extra turns, the player with the most life wins the current game. This is the really big thing that players made a lot of hoopla about. It is a very significant change, and some decks do get a benefit as a result of this, so it is very important to know. But if both players have the same amount of life, the player with more cards in their battle area wins the current game. So if you guys are both at 4 life, let's just say both at like awakened state, whoever has more battle cards on the board wins. Next up, if the player has the same number of battle cards in play in their battle area, the player with more cards in their deck wins. So if you're turboing through your deck, you're at a bit of a disadvantage there. Not that that should really ever come up. The life thing is probably enough to really just determine most of these end of time rules, but it is just the next kind of tiebreaker. If both players have the same number of cards in their deck, the player with more cards in their hand wins. And then if both players have the same number of cards in their hands, the player who is last to draw from their life area wins. That one honestly makes absolutely 0 sense to me, but it should never really get that far. If a game ever gets to that point of a tiebreaker, I would be incredibly surprised. But anyways, guys, those are all the things I wanted to go over with you guys. Some things were just important to point out. Some things were rulings that we had legitimate questions about. If you guys have any questions, leave them in the comments below. Looking forward to see you guys in Nationals. I'll see you there.